you tap into the sixth sense? Yes, you. How do you tap into the sixth sense? Well, today we're going to discuss the door to the temple of wisdom, which is also called the 13 Steps to Riches by Napoleon Hill in his awesome book entitled Think and Grow Rich. Well, good morning. My name is Ann McNeil, and I am, yes, I am the master wealth builder, helping you to build a stronger and better life and business, utilizing these principles with my McNeil Factor success system created over the last 40 plus years. 5 businesses from one page of this book, tapping into the sixth sense. You can call it whatever you want to call it, a hunch, a feeling, an urge, an intuition, tapping into the infinite intelligence, the spirit, God, whatever it is that's important to you, or maybe it's not important to you. But what we're finding is that the more we live in these 13 principles, especially the first 12, the more we're able to tap into the sixth sense and be still and quiet long enough to hear and feel a response to our desired goals and dreams and aspirations. Welcome to the Think and Grow Rich Mastermind podcast. I would be remiss if I pretended to be here by myself. I'm not today by myself, and I'm excited not to be by myself today. So help me welcome my co-host to the podcast, none other than, yes, the Galen Pingham. Good morning. Good morning, Galen. How
Good
are you?
morning. Good morning. Oh my gosh, you're excited. I don't know if that's about vacation coming up. I don't know about these trips that you got coming up, but we're also excited about this show, today's conversation. One of the things that I'm always thoughtful and mindful of. I am with a group of people closing out my second 90-day challenge, my 90-day Bible challenge, where we've gone from Genesis to Revelation in 90 days. Now, I'm going to be honest, it's taken us 124 days to go through our 90-day challenge. But one of the things that I continue to see in that book, and I also see in this book, is that there's a lot of work that we do where we're communicating what we want. We're describing what we want. We're having faith in what we want. We're developing our organized plans about what we want. But at some point, we've got to stop talking. We've got to be open to what the universe is communicating to us, what God is communicating to us and telling us to do. That's what the sixth sense is about. We've gone through all these other principles, but now the author is saying, stay open to the universe trying to tell you how to advance this thing, how to achieve this goal, how to accomplish this feat that you've said you wanted to accomplish. We've got to be open to that coming into our brain, and that's what the sixth sense is about. I'm so excited about this conversation. Selfishly, because I'm looking to get something out of this, and I think our guest is the perfect person to help us dig into this deeper. So, and let's get into this.
All right. So our special guest today is none other than Mr. Yes, I'm calling you Mr. Stanley H. Greene. And Stanley has over 25 years of experiences empowering individuals, businesses, and government entities. Wow. Through financial management and engagement. Good morning, Stanley H. Greene. Welcome to the podcast, sir. How are you this morning?
I'm doing fantastic. And thanks for the invitation, Galen. Appreciate being with you. Really looking forward to this morning.
Well, I like to always start the conversation by having our audience learn a little bit more about you than what the bio says, because your expertise spans, as you know, through many industries, such as cable, TV, telecommunications, internet services, and state, and I'm going to also add federal government. So, can you take us back on this journey when you were first introduced to this principle and the book, and we'll talk about them separately. So share with us the book first and then the principle of the sixth sense.
Sure. So the book, it was interesting how I was introduced to the book. So I grew up in Philadelphia, a single mom. Dad left us when I was 10. So, talk about adversity, going from having stuff to having nothing, and seeing my mom kind of bounce back, consistently, and then being embarrassed to uh, because I couldn't play basketball and I was drafted into playing a pickup game and I couldn't do anything, and then just being determined to be the best, actually being recruited then by a few years later by schools, and wound up playing basketball at the University of Pennsylvania for legendary Hall of Fame coach Chuck Daly, but then moving into business um, at a very young age, running construction crews in my 20s at Verizon. Things started to kind of look good from a corporate standpoint. And it was one day, I remember stopping by my house. My younger brother, he's 7 years younger. At that time, he had a Walkman, had a cassette in it, he had headphones on. And I asked him, "So what are you listening to?" And he opened up the little Walkman and showed me the cassette as Think and Grow Rich. And I'm going, wait a minute, come on. I'm now Mr. Corporate, right? At what is now Verizon. I said, this doesn't make sense. How can you think and grow rich? It just doesn't make sense to me. But I watched him go on to do these things that he felt that he could do that I thought, look, come on, that's impossible. So he thought, hey, I'm going to produce a record. And I was like, you don't know anything about the record business. And he went on to co-write and help produce one of the greatest one-hit wonders of the 80s, Two of Hearts by Stacey Q. And I'm like, hey, how did he do that? He would tell me, Stan, I'd like, I'm going to get you into the modeling business and acting. I said, I'm a corporate guy. I don't do that stuff. Give me your pictures. Just give me your pictures. And I said, nah, I wouldn't do it. And he annoyed me enough I just gave it to him. And I wound up being in TV commercials and a few movies. Mannequin was one of them. And I was a member of the Screen Actors Guild. So I said, you know what? I need to read this book and I need to get the cassette. What is it about, just going from nothing to doing amazing things? He met Arthur Ashe. He was a tennis player. He would get free equipment and make money, training other people. I mean, he just did some incredible things. And so I started to read the book and I started to listen to the audio over and over again. And in The Sixth Sense, what is discussed is how you only get the sixth sense once you have, really internalized the other principles. And so as I did that, starting first with desire, where I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, the faith, the specialized knowledge that I needed to acquire, I found myself moving into a different realm and starting to do things that I didn't know that I could do. So yes, that sixth sense was something very, very special as a result of developing this sixth sense, this hunch, and it would always be around this time of the year when something would happen and I would make a move. And through that, I've you know was able to, when we talk about the sixth sense, having this imaginary committee where I was able to have a real committee, people who I through the Think and Grow Rich and making the moves that I made, uh, developed relationships with a Bruce Gordon, who was one of the top executives, Fortune 500 executives in the country, and is the man, the African American, that named the company Verizon, Verizon. He did that as president of one of their divisions, a great mentor of mine. Ralph Roberts, uh, name may not sound familiar, but his company that he founded it would be very familiar. And he is the founder of Comcast. Um, the two tallest buildings in Philadelphia are now the Comcast buildings. We became friends and would go to lunch together. And um, Bob Johnson, who interviewed me, Bob Johnson was one of the first Black billionaires who sold BET to Viacom back in 2000. I met him back in the early 90s when he was recruiting me to run one of his cable systems in the Washington, D.C. area. We met at the BET headquarters. Um, and, many more folks. Jerry Lenfest, who I worked for, was a 33-year-old vice president and general manager. Again, none of this would have happened without developing that sixth sense and having the confidence to take risks and make moves. And Jerry, I worked for him, created a news channel for him that was purchased by Comcast, and he sold his company to Comcast for about $2.5 billion. These are folks that, were associates, business associates, friends, but none of that wouldn't have happened had I not been exposed to and internalized Think and Grow Rich.
Oh, I love the word you use, exposed to and internalized. Absolutely. Wow. Well, for those of you that have just joined us, we are speaking today with Mr. Yes, you can smile at that, Mr. Stanley Greene. Stanley H. Greene, and a powerhouse as president of Power Thinking Corp, a global human development firm. He conducts resilience and empowerment workshops for major companies like Comcast, Merck, and Aflac, as well as international partners in China and Japan. And when I read Aflac the first time and reading your bio, I had to hesitate, and I found myself hesitating again because I own stock in Aflac and was blessed to be around when the company was first formed as
Wow.
better investing organization.
Yeah.
But when you talk about the sixth sense and being willing to be led by your gut, your spirit, your intuition into this space, and I am just, I'm excited. Many of the names you mentioned, I know of or know, uh, and it is just amazing that the Think and Grow Rich philosophy tends to be the thread that connects us all together if you have a desire and you're willing to work toward that. Galen, you
Yeah.
smile around.
Oh my gosh, I'm enjoying this conversation already, and I'm thinking about the sixth sense principle. And as I shared, I've got a group of friends who I'm on this 90-day Bible challenge with, and one of our participants, she is always acting on these hunches. We will say we will have a phrase, and we would say, "Wow, that would make for a great coffee mug." 2 weeks later, she's got a coffee mug with that phrase on it on Etsy that she's selling. We'll have a conversation about some element and talking about how the Red Sea journey that Moses was on applies to leadership. And we have a phrase like, wow, there's some Red Sea moments there. Now she's got a book that she's published called The Red Sea Moments. So it's one thing to have these moments of inspiration. It's another thing to act on it. So Stanley, talk a little bit about how you've seen others or how you yourself have acted on these moments of inspiration that might have just seemed interesting, but instead of just being interesting, you decided to put some organized planning around making that a reality.
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to say that to all the folks out there who may say, "Oh yeah, I've read the book or I've listened to the recording some time ago, so I know all this stuff." Um, I would advise you to go back, read the book again. I uh, was able to obtain the audio book on Audible and was listening, and I can remember almost to the words things that I heard years ago. Um, you need to go back and not just assume that because you have read it and because you've been able to benefit by it, that you're okay. When I went back and over the past couple of weeks, and there's someone else on LinkedIn that does something on Think and Grow Rich, but by being exposed to these sessions and going back, uh, what I found was that, oh my gosh, I needed to be reacquainted and re-energized and to internalize it again to move into the next level. And there have been some things happening just over the past couple of weeks, as recently as yesterday, on a big deal that, we kind of started imagining about 6 years ago, that's back on the table. And there's something to this, the vibrations, to the sixth sense that people just have no idea of how powerful it is. Now, um, I think the first recollection I have about the utilizing the sixth sense and making a move was when I was, back in the 80s. I remember going to real estate seminars, and then they would have these books and tapes of various people like Brian Tracy and Roger Dawson on negotiating. And I would listen to them and various real estate techniques. And I would listen to them. And the folks that I worked with at the telephone company would ask me questions about buying their first homes. And boom, boom, boom. And they would say, look, Stan, you should do a seminar like these people that come to town. I was about 29 years old. And I'm going, wait a minute, I can't be like these folks. And a few months went by, and enough people say this. I said, maybe it's time to act on it. And one day, I didn't know what I was going to talk about. I didn't have a venue. I was thinking small initially and thought maybe I can test this out. Maybe go to a PTA meeting or a Rotary Club meeting and maybe share some information. But I decided to go big. I picked up the phone and I called the Marriott in Philadelphia, and I booked a room for 100 people about 4 months out. And I hung up the phone and I said, okay, now I have to prepare a seminar and I have to promote it. But I took that leap and took action. It was way out of my comfort zone because still at that point I wasn't a real comfortable public speaker either. So it was a time I would shy away from talking in front of people. So I had a lot to learn. And through that process, I was able to do my seminar. And it was problematic from the start. I was going to be on someone's show, then the show was canceled. I had reached out to the person that canceled it. Not only did I get back on his show, but I got on her show, which led to my own radio show, which led to newspaper columns. But the night of the seminar, my first ever seminar, I did buy some books and tapes, learned about credit. It was going to be on credit, prepared back then it was transparency. So with an overhead projector,
Wow.
I was ready 5 days before the seminar. On the news, they said a hurricane is coming to town. Hurricane Gloria. I'll never forget. It's coming up the Northeast. Don't go anywhere on this date. It's the date of my seminar. And my automatic thought was, I got to cancel this thing. But then I thought, you know what? I'm going to show up. I showed up. There was 60 people that paid $10 each that showed up for that seminar. That's just one of so
Wow.
many things where, you went with the hunch, you stepped out of the comfort zone, and then you're committed, and then you have to go to make it happen.
I love that story, and that is a great example of where our thinking brain says, this is what you need to do. But there's some small voice, there's this little intuition, there's this sixth sense that says, take this action. And every time I've taken that action, it's worked out. I don't know why I don't do it more. And you shared a lot of different thinking rich principles in that story. So what we like to do now is we're going to share this video that summarizes each of the steps. And as you're watching this video, I'm going to encourage everyone to think about, yes, think about the individual steps, but think about how all of this connects together to set the stage for the sixth sense. The sixth sense is literally what we're doing all these other steps for. So take a listen and see you again on the other side.
Number 1 is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step 2 is faith, having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step 3 is what we call autosuggestion. Autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically, but we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number 4 is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the mastermind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number 5 is imagination, the workshop of the mind. Everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts, the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the Wild Wild West days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us, use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. That if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spent some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
All right.
Go ahead, Galen. There, you got it.
Let me Make sure I've stopped sharing here. Yeah, so yeah, that is exactly what we're doing all this for. And I would encourage everyone to get a copy of the book so that you can read it for yourself if you have not already. Back to you, Ann.
Just want to remind everybody, if you just joined us, we're speaking today with Mr. Stanley H. Greene. And Stanley, we started talking about your introduction to the book. And then we started going into the principle. What I'd like to do is have you share with our audience what are 2 or 3 steps that they can use that you use, let's say, to tap into or exercise this process of the sixth sense. For example, I say for myself, the older I get, the more I am learning to be quiet early in the morning and being in a position to listen. So for you, what does that look like in terms of tapping into the sixth sense? Some actionable steps that our listeners can duplicate.
Sure. Well, first of all, you remember that with the sixth sense, one has to. You can't just go, let's focus on the chapter of the sixth sense, but you really have to internalize, um, all of the other preceding principles because they're all in and of themselves very powerful. But as you internalize, them all, you're going to develop this sixth sense. What's interesting is as we were talking about Think and Grow Rich and everything's about thinking, I what comes to mind is that my company, my company is called Power Thinking. So thinking has always been a part since Think and Grow Rich of what I ultimately wanted to do. Uh, but it starts with that principle number one, and you mentioned it, and to take that quiet time. It's desire. So I've worked for many people. I've run synthetic turf companies. We built fields for the Kansas City Chiefs and um, for the Philadelphia Eagles and colleges and so forth. I ran an internet company during the dot-com bubble. We had something like Zoom back in the year 2000 that we were implementing. Had a chance to be a deputy treasurer for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. But at one point, I think it was when I was at the end of my term at the synthetic turf company when we merged it with another company. This is when I took some quiet time. And I would suggest about 15 minutes a day. And just be quiet. And as you mentioned, Anne, to listen to your thoughts, but not just any thought, because many times our brains are processing 50,000 thoughts a day. This is what we talk about, what I do at Power Thinking, as we are helping them build these internal or these evidence-based resilience skills. 70 to 80% of the thoughts that we typically have are negative, unfortunately. We're thinking about what happened with the election, what's going to come up with the new administration, problems that may be going on in the family or on our jobs. But we need to be conscious of the fact that we are having some of these thoughts, and we need to put them aside and begin to focus on the principle number one, which is desire. What is it that we want to achieve? So once we merged the synthetic turf company with its manufacturer back in 2010, I said, okay, no more working for other people, and running other people's companies. Now it's time to create what I'm passionate about and bring that to fruition and bring that to market. And that was Power Thinking. But it wasn't just I wanted to create a company called Power Thinking. The desire was that came to me, and it's amazing, Anne and Galen, that when this materialized in my mind, I was excited. I was also tearful, quite frankly, because I said, this is it. And it was to help people globally to achieve what they originally thought was impossible, to change the impossible to possible. And as I reached back, it took me back to when I created a news channel, a regional news channel in Philadelphia. It's called Tri-State Media. If you ever Google the Comcast network and you look at it and you go down to history, it'll mention there was a company called Tri-State Media, a news channel that Comcast acquired. I created that company. I named that company. Many of the leaders of that company were African American. And at the end of the year, this is an old Palm Pilot. I was given this gift by the employees of that company because we pulled off a miracle. In 8 weeks, we created a news channel that had 8 different bureaus around the tri-state area in the Philadelphia market. And so it said, through your leadership and guidance, we were able to reach for the stars and achieve what most people thought was impossible. TSM, Tri-State Media, 1999. And so I kind of kept that in mind throughout my journey. And when I sat down in that, in 2010, in that quiet space, I focused on that one thing that I wanted to accomplish and spend the rest of my life pursuing. And that was helping people to achieve what they originally thought was impossible. And by doing that, we would have to change their thinking. Because throughout my career, when I came in to run underperforming companies, I didn't clear out the people and brought in my own people who had the same mindset. I wanted to change the mindset of the people who were already there, who were underperforming, so that they could perform. And we did incredible things.
Hmm.
And that's what I do today because of that focus on what is that ultimate desire, regardless of whether I could make money immediately from it. See, that's the problem. When folks say, well, wait a minute, I may go broke. I may fail. But despite that, and I've had to pivot many times with power thinking, and have had situations where you went from lots of money to much less money, but through it all, stayed focused on the ultimate desire, and pivoted and continued to move forward. Persistence is one of the the principles. And I'm actually teaching people through our resilience training, the elements of what makes people resilient and the skills that they can build so that they can overcome that adversity. As we know from the book, Think and Grow Rich, most people don't get to where they ultimately want to be because they quit. They're faced with obstacles and they go, you know what? I'm done. I'm out. And they may be that close to accomplishing what they want to accomplish.
I got to jump in because Ann, I keep hearing your voice in Stanley's story, and I want to get both of you to comment on this. Both of you mentioned desire several times already, and I'm reminded of a book that I read a few years back called "Wanting" by Luke Burgess. And he says that most people want what they see other people having, or they want what they see other people wanting. And it's not until, and that's why I can be pursuing this goal that someone else wanted, and I I face some adversity and I give up because I didn't really want it. I wanted it because I saw Stanley with it. Stanley had a red shirt. Oh my God, I want a red shirt. Boy, Stanley's working that red shirt. Let me go see if I can find me a red shirt, right? So my question is, how do you get to your desire and break away from the millions of dollars of advertising that's telling you should want what I'm selling and really get to what I really, really want? Miles Davis, my favorite musician of all time, says sometimes you have to play a long time to learn how to play like yourself. How do you get to a point where you can focus on this is what my desire is not some desire that this marketer told me I should have.
And that you want to be. Man, that was
You know what? I have one word. I have one word. One word response. Become. Next. You see what I'm learning on the journey, and it is a journey, it's not a destination. And like Stanley said, it's not about the money. And oftentimes I question why Napoleon Hill put the money up front when he talked about the desire, and then he went into the 6 steps. How much, doing what, by when? And over the years, I began to understand that I needed to be conscious, if you will, of that which I did not know, that I did not know, that I did not have. And I needed to become who I needed to become to have what I desired. And that journey continues to grow as I grow, because the money increase, the desire increase, and so does the growth. So for me, it is a journey of becoming.
Mm.
And it doesn't end, because it's not a destination, it's a journey.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I'm reminded of this one of the tape sets that I used to listen to, tape sets, and tell my age, of course.
Yes, 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 yes,
The audios.
yes.
Brian Tracy's The Psychology of Achievement. We talks about these 6 keys to success, and one of those keys was just what Ann was mentioning, and he called it self-actualization. The feeling that you are becoming everything that you are capable of becoming. Now, there are a number of folks who are watching this who are saying, yes, that's what I want, but are you willing to go through what it takes to become? Because it's not this straight line. And that is where everyone goes wrong. It's like, I'm here, I want to become there, and I just get there. It is more like this. And it's at the points where people may not have any money, may feel beaten down, they've gotten a lot of rejection, where most people, and that's why the 1% of the 1%, that's not a function of color or ethnicity, whatever. It is a function of one's resilience, as stated in Think and Grow Rich, their persistence, like the little girl who told this, man, my mother said she needs that 50 cents, and she wasn't going to leave until he gave her that 50 cents. That's the attitude that we have to have as we are becoming. And that's the piece that is missing. And that's the focus that we have with what I do with power thinking. It's helping them to understand what's going on in their head and to take control of those automatic thoughts, to identify the thinking traps, like jumping to conclusions. Well, these people didn't accomplish it, so I'm concluding that, if I go the same path, I'm not going to accomplish it either. Or personalizing, where we beat ourselves up too much and think that we're not worthy, or externalizing, where we're blaming others. These are traps that, among those 50,000 thoughts that are embedded there, that we have to recognize and have to put aside.
Wow, Galen, before we go too much further, I do want to acknowledge all the people
Yeah.
in the YouTube audience. I shared, for those of you that may have come on just a little late, we're speaking today with Mr. I have to put Mr. in front of your name, Stanley, Mr. Stanley H. Greene. And he is continuing to empower individuals right now as a part of this podcast, if you will. He's president of Power Thinking Corp. So all of you joining, Lynn, Doretha, Laura, Diane, Shannon, Wyman, so many of you, Johnny, Laverne, Imelda, everybody. And of course, those of you that may have a question, People Pools channel. Yes, if you have a question, please put your question in the chat, Carla. And Carla, Stan, I'm not sure. Are you living in Philadelphia now? Because I know Carla's from Philadelphia.
My office is in Philly. I'm living in Harrisburg because we moved from the Philadelphia area to Harrisburg when I joined the Treasury, first time in government, as a deputy treasurer and running the what was called the Bureau of Unclaimed Property years ago, before stepping out and saying, "Okay, this is it. I'm doing power thinking 100%."
Wow.
But I remain
Harrisburg,
in.
I spent a couple of years on Union Deposit Road there in
Oh my
Harrisburg,
goodness.
Pennsylvania. So I'm somewhat familiar, somewhat familiar. One of the things too, I just want to tag in on is your thing about success not being a straight line. One of the things I talk about often is my affinity for Kobe Bryant, and I say everyone wants to be the Black Mamba, but nobody wants to work out at 4 a.m. Everybody wants to be the Black Mamba and have all of this prestige and fame, but no one wants to work out at 4 a.m. And that's how Kobe became the Black Mamba. So doing this work for me always goes back to you've got to want this for you. You can't want this because mom said this was a good idea to want, or dad said that this was a great idea, or I'm going to be the first one in my family to be able to accomplish this. You've got to want this for you. So Stanley, I want to go back to, and this may sound like a similar question to my earlier question. How did you lock into what you really wanted? And again, different from what you saw your mentors do, different from what you heard might be a good idea. How did you amplify that small voice that was saying, Stanley, I'm counting on you to do this so that my desire for the universe can be fulfilled. This is what I've put in your heart. How did you amplify that voice? Because there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of noise that's going to suggest, no, this isn't going to work, that isn't going to work. How did you amplify that small voice?
Yeah, it's interesting because even one of my committee members, Ralph Roberts, the founder of Comcast. So when I took over a company, Power Thinking acquired the assets of a company called Reflective Learning that owned the intellectual property rights to positive psychology material that came out of the University of Pennsylvania's Positive Psychology Center, which is led by Dr. Martin Seligman, who's one of actually is considered the father of this new branch of psychology called positive psychology. That company failed, quite frankly. I was at their original meetings when they were raising money, and they raised a lot of money for this company to commercialize this material. And um, I wanted to be the CEO of the company because I was like, this is what I'm all about. They already had a CEO. They went about 5 years and just did not meet the objectives. Their investors shut it down. I knew one of the investors. I bumped into him one day and, you know, asked how the company was doing. It wasn't doing great. And I said, I'd love to buy it, and wound up buying it. Um, but, all of that came about, because what I felt really, really good about when I would kind of reflect on who I was and what I brought to the table are the things that made me smile and gave me this sense of gratitude and fulfillment was every situation when I turned a bad situation into a great situation. And at the foundation of these situations were the people. And when I was able to have attend a holiday party for the cable company that we turned around, one of them, and spouses of the workers, of the employees would come up to me and say to me, thank you so much. Our home life is so much better now because of how bad things were at work. It affected them, in their homes and their families. And so we made a difference all the way around. And so every time I thought about those situations, it reinforced that this is where I need to be.
Mm.
Having a company and spending all of my time helping people to change their thinking and change their outcomes.
I love it. I'm going to go back to Ann, but I'm going to seize this opportunity to quote you, Ann, because this is a phrase that you shared with me years ago, and I've played this in my mind on a weekly, if not daily basis. I'm hearing this from Stanley. It's about the money, but it's not about the money. It's about the money, but it's not about the money. It's about that person coming up to you saying, "Thank you so much for creating a better home life." Now, you can't do that without the money. So it is about the money, but it's not about the money. And that's what we lose sight of. I think it was Jim Collins that said, "How do I make money from this venture?" is a great question to answer. It's just not a very good first question to answer, right?
Yeah,
You
and if I
gotta
may very quickly, the with Ralph Roberts, founder of Comcast, and I met with him and I was telling him about this. He said, well, if they didn't make any money, how do you expect to make money with this? So, and this is a guy that, again, founder of one of the greatest media companies in the world.
fantastic.
And
Okay,
despite that, I thought, you know what? Yeah, they didn't, but I'm going to do it.
so I want to go back to Stan with the question, and how did you, when you think about his question, because oftentimes people like that, and I'll just, you can put in that bucket whoever you want to put like that. Smart people, um, they see things, but then we feel things. They
Right.
see things, but we feel things. And to me, that is the epitome of connecting to the spirit.
Mhm.
That to me is the epitome of connecting to infinite intelligence. That to me is the epitome of why, when we go back to the story of Napoleon Hill having a conversation with Andrew Carnegie, when Carnegie said, "Would you take 20 years of your life and do the research, but I would not pay you a dime?" So if it was about the money, Galen, and to all of our listeners, we wouldn't be sitting here today. What we never talk about, and one of my favorite books is a conversation between Carnegie and Hill, is called The Wisdom of Andrew Carnegie, where Napoleon Hill is interviewing Carnegie, and he asked the questions that became Think and Grow Rich. But one of the questions he asked him, he said, "This mastermind, where did this mastermind come from?" And Carnegie said, "Jesus Christ was the first masterminder. And the disciples was the first mastermind group." So when we go back to the foundation of the book, really is more spiritual. But when he wrote it the first time, he had Christ all in it, wouldn't sell it. He took Christ, left the spirit, and you can feel the spirit all through the book. So going back to the feeling, Galen, going back to your question, not about the money, but we're driven by the money to connect with the desire. But we must become, if you will, because in the beginning it may start a small amount of money. Okay, I don't need to do much. But as we raise that money level up to buy a business or to take that big quantum leap, then we must become more to have more, right? So I want to come back to the feeling, Stanley, in terms of that conversation with Mr. Roberts. He didn't see what you saw, but also he didn't feel what you felt. Can you just take a couple of steps and just share with us what were, the first few steps? Because of course you're probably thinking in your mind, if you will, but not necessarily your spirit. Well, no, he's right. He might be right, but I just know that there's something in me that can make this into a great success. By faith, of course, because you don't know that you don't know until you stay on that journey.
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, we're different people. Ralph is a businessman, and he had a belt business. And then when um, when they back in I guess it was the 60s, and they were starting to develop pants. They call them sans belt, and they didn't have the belt, polyester pants and so forth. And he sold the belt business because okay, I can't make any money in that anymore. It's going beltless. And I know the person that sold him the first cable system in Tupelo, Mississippi, Pete Musser, and he sold him that company. And from there, he was Comcast, but that was a struggle initially. But he thought, okay, I can make money. And so the focus was always, as a businessman, make money, make money. Thomas Edison wasn't a businessman. He was an innovator, an inventor. And of course, you remember the importance of persistence was that, he tried like 10,000 times, failed 10,000 times in this creation. And the average person probably would have given up after, 20 times. But in his mind, it was, this was just the 10,000 things that didn't work. So I'm getting closer to where I need to be. And ultimately, I mean, here we all are, benefiting from that invention. I have lights on, you have, we take it for granted now, and it is a big money maker. So there are some folks that will step out into to areas where, they have this passion and this strong desire. There may not be a clear path to profits, at least initially, but they're on that, and I'm on that particular path. It's easy to go out and buy, relatively easy to buy McDonald's franchises or Wendy's or things that are established, cash generating entities. But the more challenging thing is to start with an idea and a vision and try to monetize that. It may not happen. It's not going to happen as fast as, buying this popular, McDonald's franchise. It has, all kinds of traffic every day. We've been in those drive-through lines, and we're like, boy, these folks are making money. Well, yeah, that's relatively easy. But to take something that has failed, folks have been at it for 5 years, something that people don't necessarily just gravitate to, because most people think that they're okay.
Mhm.
Like they may say, "Oh, I gotta have cable TV, or I gotta have my streaming." But in terms of improving their mental health, their ability to accomplish whatever it is that they desire to accomplish, they figure, "Oh, I'll get there. I think I'm okay." And that is the challenge with what we do, that most people think they're okay. Oh, yeah, I get angry and I blow up when somebody presses my buttons, but that's just who I am, not realizing that they can change all of that, not realizing that they can be great at sales and take rejection. And like I did when I wanted to show the Aflac folks that I train, I did it myself. I joined as an agent, and I failed 88 times. I got rejected 88 times over a 2-year period and landed the biggest account that I ever had. I know it can happen, but
Wow.
the average person, won't go through that.
Oh my. All right, so we are. Oh my gosh, time is running away from us. I want to join in just thanking everyone who is watching us on YouTube. I see some names I see every week, such as Johnny Lord, Wyman Winbush, Diane Kingflowers, Doretha Dennis. I'm not going to be able to mention all these names. I see a couple names I'm seeing for the first time. Whether this is your first time watching us on YouTube or your 19th time watching us on YouTube, please hit that thumbs up icon underneath the video, because we want to let the YouTube algorithm know that there's something else going on other than the upcoming administrative moves in the government. So hit that thumbs up icon so that we can continue to bring you great conversations like the one we're having with Mr. Stanley H. Greene. One of the things that is coming to my mind, and Ann, I'm going to ask you to talk about the annual meeting here, is that all of the things that you've discussed, embedded in all of your stories, I keep hearing the word courage. It takes courage to say, this is what I desire. It takes courage to say, I can turn this thing around when other people have failed. It takes courage to say, I don't care what you got to do, but my mama says I need to come home with that 50 cents. That takes courage. Again, I just keep hearing this theme of courage to listen to and amplify that small voice that might not make sense logically. It might not make sense logically to follow this path. And one of the places that I go to get the courage to say this is my plan for the upcoming year is the annual meeting that you established. Talk a little bit about that annual meeting and how people can get involved if they're looking for a dose of courage.
Absolutely, Galen. Napoleon Hill tells us that on an annual basis, we really should look at uh, doing a self-inventory. Self-inventory. And for me, the self-inventory started back around 1980 when we had our first mastermind group of about 10 women, and we would meet every week. And then we began to realize that the goals we set were just too short and they needed to be longer. So we went from a week to a month to a year to 5 years. And then we said, well, let's project out 15 years. Oh, how about 20? Well, it's been 45 plus years now since 1980. And so we host an annual meeting for your life. This is a Think and Grow Rich International Mastermind Association annual meeting for your life. It is not a conference. And I have to keep reminding everybody, this is not a conference, so there's no conference bags. There's no, a keynote speaker. Every individual, including the children, are expected to bring your life in writing. And if you show up and you don't have anything written, before you enter the room, we have a short survey of about 4 or 5 pages. It is short. And we require you to fill out the survey. It's just yes and no before you can enter. Why is that so? It is so because we really want to encourage you to think about the 10 areas of your life and question whether or not you hit the goals you set in the beginning of the year, whether they were written or not. But this is an opportunity for each of us to write these goals and then sit at a table with, 2 or 3 or 4 people and share what you've done in the past year, what you're planning to do in the upcoming year. And when I tell you it is phenomenal, Galen, we now in my company, well, one of the 5 businesses, MCO Construction, we are required to read the book Think and Grow Rich. Yes, it's a part of the application when you come to work with us. We're a small firm, about 30 plus people, and some of them are on here. But my position is this: if you're the weakest link in my chain, then we need to work on that. If you are not willing to read the book, it is grounds for termination. Yes, I said that. And so starting in 2025, this survey is going to become a part of our application for employment. Why? Oftentimes we don't think about our lives. We think about these jobs. And I think Stanley hit on that when we talked about his journey. So thank you, Stanley, for that, because again, we don't stop to think about the families that are impacted based upon our employment. And we had a grand opening, Galen, this week at our company, celebrating over 45 years. We purchased, purchased office space and had a grand opening. It's the first time we had an opening in 45 years, right? But again, the point was to see, I've hired over 100 plus interns. Some of them came back unknowingly. We didn't know they were coming. And just like Stanley said, they came back and they said, thank you. Some of our old employees showed up because they still feel like they work here. They've gone on 2 or 3 other companies, and they say, we felt so much at home here. Now, what we don't talk about is the journey. This annual meeting is a part of the journey because we do care about everybody that works with us, but also the family. So when you think about where can you go with your entire family to set goals in the spiritual, the family, the financial, the health, the education, the personal development, your recreation, your business or your career, your civic and creative area of your life, and to set those goals for 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And I'm in my 45th year. And I think my Yes, my report is about 5, 6, 7, maybe 800 pages right about now. Started one page though. Start as one page, one page. One page, page 28 from the book Think and Grow Rich. 6 steps. So Galen, I went a little long in sharing that because I think it's so critically important for people to just set the intention to focus on your desire, because attention follows intention. Attention follows intention. Can I say that one more time, Galen? If we don't have an intention about something, we're going to put any time on it. We're going to, schedule time in the calendar to do any of these things. And so my desire with the annual meeting, and you can go to the International Masterminders.com. That's International Masterminders with an S.com. And you can register there. You can also register on Eventbrite. We'll put the link in the chat, Galen, if you could just help me out, put the link in the YouTube chat, and you can register. We do have a holiday sale that's going on. Galen, if you can put the JPEG back up one more time, please. We do have the holiday sale going on for the individuals to share if you're interested in joining. And we have a number of people that fly in. And Stanley H. Greene, we were going to invite you and your family, your grandchildren, your children, we invite everybody, right? And I say that because, again, it's an opportunity for individuals to really look at every single area of the life. And so that's it, Galen, for the annual meeting. Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and prepare to wrap up. Stanley, what we do now is we have you share, any last thoughts, how people can connect with you, and anything you would like for people to do, to listen to, or any of those thoughts, if you would please share. Thank you.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, and thank you, Galen. This has been an honor. Any time that there are folks that kind of help me to go through the past, I always enjoy, telling some of those stories because, people kind of see where you are and what you've done, and they don't realize, what got you there. And it was through this invitation that prompted me to go back and listen to the book, read, and I have a couple of copies of the book, and read again. And I said to myself, this is where it all started. It's been so many years, and you kind of forget, what got you moving in this direction. And so I'm going to go back and continue to do that. I did some of it in preparation for this, but that's when it hit me. So I would advise each and every one of you very simply to read Think and Grow Rich. And if you are reading it, after you read it, or if you're listening to the audio, do it again and again. This is not about just having one exposure and then say, oh, okay, I got it. It was pretty good. Good stuff. But the goal is to internalize it, and then start with your own desire, what it is, regardless of what you may be doing right now, what it is that really gets you excited. And that when you think about it, every day that you get up in the morning, you're so happy that you're doing what you are doing, and you figure out a way to build wealth with that. And so that's what I would advise you to do. If you'd like to reach out to me, feel free to contact me, Stan at powerthinkingcorp.com. And there's my website. You can scroll down or go to contact us. There'll be something that pops up, and you can leave your information, and I'll get back to you. So, and feel free to join us for our Wednesday trainings. We'll invite you to be with us. You can join us anytime. The phone number should be there. Or just ask me for the link, and we'll get you the link for our Zooms. There's some folks who are, giving their testimonials. A person, the market director for half the state of PA for Aflac. I do training for them. All the new associates in half the state of PA that come in, they're getting this resilience training. We're teaching them how to overcome adversity and keep moving. There's a video with a 30-minute interview where I kind of go through my background from my days growing up in Philadelphia to what I'm doing today. So thank you for bringing that up, Galen. And all I can say, folks, is again, let's go back to it's not complicated. Read the book, read it over and over, listen to the audio over and over. You will be surprised at what will happen as a result. Because, again, by being invited here, I reflected on all the things I've done and where it all started. And it all started with that initial conversation with my brother when he was listening to the tape, and I asked him, how can you think and grow rich? Well, I certainly learned. Oh, and by the way, when I started on this journey with the cable company and so forth, I went from a salary of like $40,000 to uh, multiple times that over a 10-year period. I won't give the number, but multiple, multiple. So you'd be surprised at what you can do and how you can progress by just focusing on that book.
Ah, so such a rich conversation. And again, I got another insight just that you pulled from me. You know, we often find our way to success, and then once we become successful, we stop doing the things that got us to that
Yes,
success. And so
yes.
your encouragement to read this over and over and over again, I dare say that that's probably what's contributed to Ann's five businesses and her continued success is because she's been in this book since 1980. So keep doing the things that allows you to get to where you are. I've enjoyed this conversation. My name is Galen Bingham. I am the leadership strategist. You can find me on every platform. I also encourage you to check out my website. You can go to Kill Global Coaching, KILN, globalcoaching.com. And then I'm also host of the award-winning Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership podcast. Just won 2 global awards for Best Podcast in the Self-Help category and then Best Host for 2024, as indicated by the Signal Awards and the Davy Awards. But I'm going to encourage you to go to my website, click this link right here in the middle, and get access to the Own Your Career Challenge. This is a challenge, a 4-week challenge that I'm doing with our other co-host, Dr. Peter James, where for $97, you're going to get access to not only one executive coach, but you're going to get access to 2 executive coaches over 4 weeks to help you focus on your career. Not just how you can make money, but how can you thrive in your corporate career? How can you get the most out of it? How can you make sure that your company is working for you as hard as you are working for them? So I double dog dare you to try us. It's $97. I can't believe Dr. Peter talked me into doing this for $97, but you get 2 executive coaches for 4 weeks, over 4 sessions and some group coaching for $97. Check us out. Go to killglobalcoaching.com. Hit the yellow link right at the top of the page.
Well, well. At the top of the podcast, we always share that this is going to be one of the best. And Mr. Stanley H. Greene, we cannot say thank you enough. This has truly been awe-inspiring. And Galen, I was going to say something and he started talking. So I want to just mention what I was going to say. Your story reminded me of Galen's story when he started on the podcast with us years ago and talked about his corporate journey and the corporations he worked with. But this is not the same Galen that started this journey. You are not the same Stanley H. Greene that started the journey when you picked up the book and then the book, if you will, picked you up, if you will, right?
Right.
And we're glad to know you got to pick it up again. I just cannot say enough also about those who join us every week. And Galen, if you could drop, I'm in the YouTube and I'm looking for Stanley's link. Could you drop what you just shared? Just want to make sure before we close the chat that we drop Stanley's link in the YouTube chat so that individuals can reach him. Also, the Think and Grow Rich annual meeting for your life. Thank you, Lynn Whitfield, is January 3rd and 4th. I was so excited. I think I forgot to mention the dates. And that is the internationalmasterminders.com. My name again is Ann McNeil, and I am the Master Wealth Builder, helping you to build a stronger and better life and business with the McNeil Factor success system that comes from the 6 steps to riches. The 6 steps that Napoleon Hill shares. And if you'd like to get those 6 steps, you can text the number 59925. The number again is 59925. Text that number, 59925. And in the chat, just put the word "and," that's ANN. Put the word "and" in the chat, 59925, and we'll send that. I call it my 6-point business plan. And Stanley and Galen and all of us, Stanley said it well, revisit the principles. It all starts with your desire. Get greater clarity about what is it that you want, and be willing to do the inner work to be, to do, to have. So until next time, we want to just thank all of you for listening. And remember, yes, remember to continue to think and grow richer. We'll see you next time. Thank you.